Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Calgary ATESL workshop with Herly Cervera about the indigenization. So, Herly Cervera, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you so much, Nora, for the introduction and the warm welcome. And thank you to everyone who participated in tonight's session or the workshop about cultural connection, incorporating Indigenous resources in ESL, EAL instruction. So I'm very glad to have you all here so that we can collaborate together as we explore our own classrooms and then at the same time all the community resources that we may have, so that this will be part of our collaboration also in the community. So let me just take you here to, sorry about that. Mistake on the so the cultural connection incorporating Indigenous resources in ESL, EAL instruction will be facilitating for tonight, but of course I do respect that there are a lot of participants here who may have also the knowledge and the expertise whom I would be requesting your participation later towards so the course of our discussion this evening. Before I would like to begin with this discussion for tonight, I would like to make my land acknowledgement. As a resident of this land, I want to express my gratitude to the Indigenous peoples for allowing me to live, work, and connect with the environment. I honor the traditional knowledge and keepers and elders, past and present, and acknowledge the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude. I am dedicated to deepening my understanding of local Indigenous communities and fulfilling my responsibilities to the land and its people. Today, I pay tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, including the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tutina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, and the Métis Nation of Alberta in the city of Calgary. When we start about this session, I would like to bring back to the title, which presents at the very beginning of this phrase, which says cultural connection. And I would like to embark on this. When we mention about cultural connection, somehow we get lost on how we teachers, practitioners in the community, how are we able to connect our students, learners, or probably clients so that they are more feeling welcome and integrated and settled into their own communities. And believe me or not, it's always a big challenge, specifically to those who are facilitating in the classroom or in their respective communities, on how to bridge the gap and how to build that connection so that all of these individuals, specifically the newcomers who come to Canada, are fully integrated. When I mean here integration is that there is a connection also in terms of their culture, shared values, beliefs, and behaviors within the community which we interact as individuals. In the same manner, when we think about cultural connection, we are aiming here as educators to involve also that meaningful ties, meaning to say that have we done already some sort of reflection in understanding deeply the appreciation and the culture and the tradition and the customs, not only of the hosts, so culture, but also of the people who come to live into the land. In the same manner, when we build this cultural connection, have we come into such realization whether this connection has already strengthened the bond within the community? More so, does it also cultivate a sense of belonging and enriching the collective experiences of its member? When I mean the members, meaning to say it's a contributing member to the society, whether this could be the perspective of the teachers or educators, or also those newcomers who come to settle and to live in this country called Canada. With this alone, this is already the, so the whole perspective of why I am drawn to present to you tonight, because I want to see to a point whether have we really embraced that cultural connection? Have we really brought that cultural connection, not only in the community, but have we started that one in the classroom? So it's a bit of a big challenge for us, specifically that having a lot of individuals coming to different classrooms, and individuals also who may be attending classes in person or online. These are the different clients or learners or students that we have to immerse into these cultural connections that we set. And when I speak about cultural connections, we cannot, avoid but discuss like how much of these cultural connections are talking about the indigenous, so pieces, the indigenous culture. How much of these cultural connections have we included about the perspective, the knowledge, and the resources that are aligned with indigenous perspective and indigenous teaching. So these alone are the challenges that we can probably share together and collaboratively make connections so that at the end of this presentation, we go back to our own, field of expertise or practice, and then we can bring whatever are the knowledge and at the same time the skills and the experiences that each and every one of us will be able to share for tonight's collaboration. The next part of the title, I would like to focus on, because we want to build that cultural connection, how much of the incorporation of indigenous resources in ESL or EAL instructions have we really put into our classroom or community centers. Meaning to say, when we speak about incorporating indigenous resources, somehow a teacher may get lost, or somehow a teacher may be hesitant, so to approach on this. In the same manner, I, being a non-Indigenous, somehow I have to, so to consider a big respect and honoring the elders and the knowledge keepers of the Indigenous perspective and the resources. And that is why coming here as a non-Indigenous, I would like to make it a point that what I am bringing here is my perspective as a non-Indigenous, bringing on how I can incorporate in my classroom and helping also my fellow educators on how we can incorporate such huge amount of resources that we have related to Indigenous perspective that we can take into our classroom. And when I mean here incorporating Indigenous resources, we have tons of resources. In the previous years, together with my colleague in Northwest, so Sarah Gnida, we had already created this new revision. Actually, it's a revision of the ATESL best practices, wherein one of the section there is about the indigenization. And with that, I just pulled out some of this, so good points on how and what and how many other strategies we can actually incorporate in the classroom when we talk about incorporating resources related to indigenization. So one of that could be storytelling. Storytelling is one aspect that can generate a lot of integration among our students and learners in the classroom. Storytelling is very powerful because each and every one has always a take home, a bring home story that would like to share in the classroom. So this is really a beautiful, so strategy that we can actually work on. And another one is the cultural events and celebrations. How much
Okay,
of this,
good. You're here.
how much of these strategies, so have we consider into our classroom, meaning to say, like, are we aware of a lot of celebrations, a lot of events that are connected to indigenous, so practices, traditions, and culture? Have we already informed the students? Have we already invited the students into these events so that there is really a clear, real world appreciation of what's really going on in the community? So this is also another good strategy that we can employ into the classroom. Community engagement. Community engagement is one aspect also that can be very meaningful as considered as a strategy to incorporate these indigenous resources. And when I mean community engagement, we can invite a lot of resource speakers, the elders, so long as we are following in terms of the protocol on how to invite them. And there is also some kind of perspective on how they can provide, so a real experience, a real perspective coming from these elders, and them being in our classroom would really enhance our understanding of their story, our understanding of their culture, of their own people, and the many groups, so where they belong. And this could be a good avenue for learners and teachers to create that collaboration in the community. Another strategy could be the audio-visual resources, and in which later on I will be showing a lot of these resources that are pretty much available. And the ATESL best practices, again, in the section under Indigenization, hosted a few of these audio-visual resources, because there are also some print materials that you can actually explore. And when I mean audio-visual, so you can more likely explore on videos. You can also explore on podcasts. You can explore also on narratives and a lot of other interactive materials that is facilitated by multimedia. And this can really enhance, so the curiosity of our learners. This can also enrich the awareness of our learners in the community, being aware of how rich and at the same time how the expanse of this indigenous resources available in the community. And last but not the least is the language activities, in which I am sure majority of the attendees for tonight are geared towards instruction, either ESL, EAL, or probably related to such. When we mean about language activities, we cannot deny the fact that we have to develop the core skills, which is your listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And again, I have to go back to that apprehensions that somehow if I am a teacher, somehow I have that apprehension on how to generate activities, how to pull out resources, how to incorporate all of these things all together into the class so that I will be using this in the most appropriate, culturally sensitive, application of all these resources in the classroom. And I am just showing here, the illustration is just simply pinpointing on some of those strategies that we can work on in the classroom in terms of incorporating indigenous resources into our, so into our centers, programming, or specific instruction. Now, as I mentioned a while ago, the indigenization piece in the ATESL best practices, I just simply lifted here. There are actually 4 statements of best practices that I would like to orient everyone. So just for the sake of an information to those who are not so familiar with the ATESL best practices. So this was mainly created during the time of the pandemic, where together with Sarah Gnida from Northwest, so we had this revision and of the ATESL best practices, where we added a section on indigenization. And I just want to simply direct you to the 4 statements of best practices. On statement 94, if I may read here, it says EAL providers acknowledge that they have the role in ensuring that the calls to action issued by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, or the TRC, result in a long-term reconciliation across Canada. That is why this invitation for you to attend today is one of, so that call to action, because it's not simply putting all the resources into one platform like the ATESL. It's not just a one-time deal that we have to, so put all of these wonderful resources that are geared toward indigenization, but there is that call to action on how we can propagate and how we can maintain, that sense of awareness and that application to and through. So this is one of the statements of best practice. In the same manner, on statement 95, instructional staff take part in professional development activities that increase background knowledge, encourage reflection of their own biases and assumptions, incorporate other ways of knowing and learning, and expand their capacity and confidence as they incorporate Indigenous knowledge and teaching methods in their classes. And again, I would like to connect this to our gathering tonight, because this is actually the call for everyone who are here tonight, that we in the instructional staff or support, so in the instructional staff, it is part of our professional development to continuously embark in a journey where we have to understand, to promote, and at the same time to use and utilize, so all of these Indigenous resources in the classroom by simply acquiring a lot of information, skills, and knowledge, so that we become more confident in our incorporation of these resources into our own classroom. And then we have also statement number 96. The program centers Indigenous relationships and voices as essential to newcomer settlement and language training. Probably to those of you who are attending here and part of the LINK programming, the language instruction for newcomers to Canada, you are more aware that in some of the sections probably, or the themes that you work on, there are already incorporation of Indigenous materials or resources. Because again, this is very important as every newcomer comes to Canada. Sometimes they get lost, so in meeting people in their community, in understanding, so some of those words, signages, and even information that are available in the community. So how much of these informations are being catered in the classroom? How much of this are being put into consideration so that those newcomers are fully understanding of what's around them in their community and who they are with in terms of the people in their community. And with that being said, this will also help them fully understand and fully integrate into the community where they are at. Statement number 97, Indigenous content is woven into language and settlement classes in a way that honors Indigenous peoples, long-standing histories and heritages in the lands now called Canada, dismantles racism and misrepresentation of Indigenous peoples, and foster relationships and reconciliation. I am sure some of you probably have encountered a lot of those misconceptions, a lot of those misinformation, and probably a lot of those curiosity among your learners, having asked questions that somehow we get lost on how to provide answers or how to, so to direct them to the right information. And I believe statement number 97 is providing us a way to also equip ourselves as educators and as partners in the community to be aware of this vast information. And by being aware is also becoming equipped. And by being equipped is becoming, confident enough to be able to integrate this one into our practice, whether that is facilitating, teaching, counseling, or whatever, whatever kind of work that you do in the community. The purpose of this one is to avoid and to combat that misrepresentation, and at the same time to provide appropriate information to every learner, to every newcomer in the community. And last but not the least, the statement of best practice number 98. This is really geared towards instructors, incorporating pedagogies that value Indigenous ways of knowing and learning, highlighting connection to place, collective orientation, and shared learning. In other words, when we instructors are challenged somehow on how to teach, how to approach, the Indigenous materials, sometimes we forget that a combination of these Indigenous materials and at the same time, the background of our learners can somehow, bridge that gap, because we without us knowing that some of our learners actually are sharing these particular experiences of what the indigenous, so the indigenous experience may have, and probably they can be part also of an indigenous community in their home country. And at the same time, by expanding this knowledge and learning and highlighting the vast resources that is available in the community, we can come up with this collective understanding, and at the same time sharing of information and learning, which will lead us to so a more meaningful classroom interaction, and at the same time meaningful learning in the classroom. So this is really our so part in the indigenization section of the ATESL best practices. And let me just stop here my screen before I go into details. And I would like to direct you into the ATESL best practice in itself. So we have here, this is the ATESL best practice. And if you are new to this section, if you're a new member, or probably you are new to this link or the site, please just type in ATESL, and then all you have to do is just click on the resources. And then after that resources, you will be directed to the ATESL best practices, in which I am showing here to you. And under this ATESL best practices, if you are still challenged in looking for some of the resources probably that you would like to incorporate in your classroom related to indigenization, you just simply scroll down. And then the inclusion section includes here indigenization as part of it. And I would like to open it for you so that you will see the materials, the resources that are available for you to use. And you don't need to subscribe or probably to sign in to be able to access these resources. So what I read a while ago are simply the statements of best practice. And then each of this, once you click, there are specific statements that are connected to each of the general statements of best practice. And I would like to encourage everyone here who are participating in this workshop to please take a look, have some time to explore, and then see to it whether, so the practices that you have in the community in one way or the other aligns with, the best practice statements, and at the same time descriptions that are provided here in our ATESL best practices. So there are also vignettes that are available in case you are challenged, like, how am I going to apply or incorporate these resources? I am challenged because I am being asked with questions that I am a little bit uncomfortable in responding because I am a non-Indigenous and I do not know on how to do it. So there are also a lot of vignettes that can help you around. Specifically reading them will probably give you some idea on how other practitioners in the community approach such matter when we are relating this to Indigenous perspective, and at the same time on how we can make use of these resources available to the community or probably into your own classroom. So the vignettes are indeed very helpful because this can help you connect and at the same time see to yourself, for yourself as well, on where are you at in terms of your practice, whether you are a beginner teacher or an expert in your field. And I believe the most important in today's, collaboration that we are going to make is checking on how much, resources do we have available to, to be incorporated in our classroom. So let me just take you, I am still on the same page for indigenization. And under this, there is resources for the classroom. In case you would like to try for a specific skill, whether that would be listening, speaking, reading, or writing, so you can have your choice here. And all you have to do is simply click, and then you can be directed already to the link, and then you can open that. So say, for instance, here, I would like to direct you onto the most basic that we normally apply for beginner learners, specifically those with CLB 2, 3, 4. So you can actually check on the word Indigenous explained. And then once you click on that, you will be directed to the link. And then off, you will open it, and automatic, you will be directed already to that resource or material that can be played or can be used in the classroom, whatever, so whatever you want to do with it. So say, for instance, if you want to use it as just a starting point in your discussion about Indigenous, so the Indigenous culture or probably Indigenous peoples, so this would be a good starting point for you to make use, specifically for your beginner classes. Now, those who are beginning intermediate, so CLB 5, sometimes CLB 6 also, depending on, depending on the classroom that you're handling, you can actually be the gauge or the judge into your own classroom, whether this could be appropriate for your students. You can also make use of this one as an introduction. This is only a short video that can lead you to your discussion, whether this is a support material or you would use this as part of a small talk activity in the classroom. So you can try this as another resource. And I am just simply clicking on that so that you will be guided on how we can approach the different resources available in our ATESL best practices. So again, if you are going to scroll down, and then you are looking for some materials that probably would be ideal for your level. If it is a link program, then you can scan through and then just click on that arrow down, and on automatic, you will be seeing there the links. And then like what I did a while ago, you just simply click on the link, and then you can be the judge whether you are intending a particular activity good for 1 to 2 minutes, for 4 minutes or longer. So that's basically your choice. And again, all of this are provided with links in a manner where you can choose, and a lot of resources as well that you can actually apply on. And I am directing you here to the TIES, or the TIES has already created. This is another nonprofit organization in Calgary, and maybe some of you are part of the TIES community. Susan Clavel, who was also our Indigenous person who guided us throughout our Indigenous journey in creating this ATESL best practices. She was also the one who is, I believe, the resource person who created this Indigenous Voices in the Classroom. So if you click on that, there's a lot of resources that are already designed for everyone to partake. So say, for instance, here, instead of you looking and then searching in YouTube or Google, you don't have to get worried, because there are a lot of resources that Suzanne Clavel, the curriculum developer of these materials, created and made it available for everyone to access. And then if you click down, so you can actually download PDF. And these are already a lot of resources that you can pull out from a lot of selections, whatever activities you would like to do, from simple, to complex ones, depending again on the level that you would like to work in your classroom. And again, what is beautiful with this material is they are actually organized in such a way that CLB levels will be easily accessed. So if you're a teacher handling CLB 2, 3, you can probably get into that CLB 2 category. Or if you're a teacher that is assigned with CLB 4 classes, so more or less you can also check the CLB 4 Indigenous Voices in the Classroom. And then for the higher levels, we have also for CLB 5 and 6, reconciliation. So these are all great resources to start, and at the same time to use. And we would really invite everybody to check, because these resources were researched, and at the same time were already checked by our resource person, Susan Clavel, as well. She's part of the Indigenous community, and she already provided us with a lot of mentoring, a lot of guidance throughout this collaboration, and at the same time in-housing of the resources that are available for the community to check out. And let me now go back to my main PowerPoint. Let me just stop the screen for a while. And after I have introduced to you this indigenization piece, which I simply lifted from the main ATESL page, I would like to direct you, as I mentioned a while ago. So I just simply give you here an overview in case that you are challenged on what would be the ideal resource materials that would be best for the classroom. So I'm just simply pulling out some of those resources that I've already tried in the classroom and has been constantly doing and incorporating in my own classroom. So whether beginner and intermediate, you can actually try and check out these resources. Indigenous, the word indigenous, this is very important because this explains on how every learner or every newcomer can understand the basic, so words that are associated in understanding the indigenous culture, tradition. And the Namwayut, this is also another important video that you can actually make use as part of the resource in the classroom. What I like about the Namwayut, this is a narration about the story of a person who simply tells us of what happened during the residential school experience up until the liberation from that residential school, the trauma that the person can carry up until, so the person is already liberated from that residential school, but the trauma continues to linger. And the reason for this one is we have to understand on the experience of every indigenous kid, indigenous child who underwent into that horrors and traumatic experiences while being schooled in residential schools. Now, my only suggestion when we approach the Namwayut, probably we can also make a little bit of caution to our learners. So what I normally do in the classroom is I provided some caution to the learners because some of our learners probably are coming from a country where they're also experiencing trauma, war, terrorism. So we have to be mindful because that can also trigger some traumatic experiences to them. But anyway, what I normally do in the classroom is before playing this video on Namwayut, I give such, such caution so that those who feel like they are not ready to watch on that, they can excuse themselves from the classroom. And those who are ready, they can always be there and then, so participate in that activity. So let me now go back to the next slide. In the same manner for intermediate, some of you probably are handling higher, so CLB level, or if you are not connected with CLB, probably in some other related, so English programs. Intermediate CLB 5 or 7, I would like you to try the Canadians have been breaking their promises to Indigenous people. So this is really a good video because it provides us an information that is so connected with Alberta because this one is situated in Alberta. So more or less, the learners can appreciate because there is some connection to the land specific to Albertan perspective and specific to Albertans experience, specifically of Indigenous people, so who were affected during those broken promises by the government, so during those times of their own experience here in Alberta. So this is also another video that you can consider as part of the resources that you can use in your classroom. And again, I would like to caution those who will be using this material. So before playing this, please try to review and then make some sort of cautionary measures at the beginning of your presentation, so that those who are triggered by trauma will also be informed about the content of this resource. And it's also important, there are videos that invites a lot of elders and knowledge keepers who had done a lot of narratives, a lot of interviews. So this rural routes elder speak is a good point where the learners can have not really an interaction, but a clear-cut understanding of what each of the indigenous group of peoples will be able to see, to provide them with information related to their culture, related to their tradition. So this is really a good start as well to speak about those resources in the classroom that is somehow a storytelling, and at the same time in a form of an interview. Okay, the next one here. Resources for multi-level class. I pulled this out from Susan Clavel's, so materials that I showed a while ago. So somehow when we approach the resources that will be incorporated in the classroom, we are offered tons of materials, but another challenge for every teacher is how to start. What to start, how to start, I don't know how to use it. In other words, having those vast resources is also our responsibility to check in and to gauge whether this is appropriate for my level or not. And I'm just showing here some of the lifted, so pieces coming from Susan Clavel's creation of those tons of resources for multi-level class. You can actually start with picture or probably some vocabulary to start with your multi-level class. Or probably you can also come up with some specific activity, like on the next column in here, where Susan has identified some learning outcomes, and at the same time a good list of questions to probably start to warm up the activity or any exercise that you would like to incorporate in the class, considering the indigenous peoples or any other topic that is connected to the indigenous culture or people. As well, what is also good in here, another resources for multi-level class, in terms of reading, we can also approach this, and paragraph writing. These are also good materials where you can exercise in keeping your class and at the same time engage into activities where the content is applying the perspective and then the stories of indigenous people. These are very short stories, but very meaningful, because each of the learner can actually pick up some of those words, and probably can help them in remembering those information. And by remembering, that can also help them enrich the information and expand, and up until you are also going to provide them with another activity that can help enrich their understanding of those information related to indigenous culture. In the LINK program, I am aware that each of us operate on the basis also of themes, or the thematic approach. And somehow when we mean theme here, somehow we do have themes related to health, related to employment, related to culture, and many others. So I just simply lifted this one again from Susan Clavel's material. When we speak about traditional indigenous health, somehow we overwhelm our student with a lot of health information of what is available right now. When we think about health in the context of traditional indigenous health, this is probably our way of, adding some information that can connect of what is given at the moment and what is also being practiced among the indigenous people. And it is really good because you can find similarities, you can find a little bit of differences, but you can also find more on similarities in terms of the approaches. And then by showing this to the class, we are also giving, the students their kind of reflection of what has transpired or what has been practiced in their own culture. Because without us knowing, some of our students may bring their own, health practices, and at the same time orientation that may somehow connect with what the indigenous, peoples are doing. So these are really great information that we can approach. And what is good also with Suzanne Clavel's material is, if I may direct you at the very, on the second page here at the bottom where it says reflection questions. What are the differences in healthcare between your home country and Canada? Think about the 4 factors for health. Do you think you are healthy or unhealthy? What things can you change to be healthier? How do you think people in healthcare can help indigenous peoples? In other words, this is really what we mean by, so like that cultural connection. This is really what we mean by that connection, that bridge the gap between what is happening here at the moment, what has happened in the past, and what has happened in our students or learners orientation back from their home country. And then we are going to get also some of their prior knowledge, which can also be very helpful in incorporating and bridging those connections. And at the same time, that could create really a wonderful experience to both teachers and the learners alike. So this is really great because Susan has identified the different factors, and those factors can somehow mean a lot, specifically when it comes to, when it comes also to the application of this into our own practice and the practice also of the traditional indigenous health. Another thing that I would like to add is, as a non-indigenous, like somehow we were challenged, like hesitant as well, like I don't want to approach the indigenous resources because first I am not an indigenous, and by me not being part of the indigenous, so community, I don't want to do some misappropriation or misconception or misrepresentation, and somehow those are the challenges. But I want, so you to check out this video from an indigenous person here who is telling us non-indigenous who are attending here, who are non-indigenous, on how we can help. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be an indigenous to help, promote the indigenous resources. We can be an ally. We can be, a promoter of all of this vastness of resources that they have available in the community. We educators in the community, we are tasked, we are responsible to, so to keep abreast of what is happening around us, of what is happening in the community. But it would be good as well that when I mean community, it has to be inclusive. It's not only the community that is available for the so the non-indigenous, but much more a connection between the indigenous and then the non-indigenous, so that there would be more appreciation of what is really present in the community. And with that being said, there are also a lot of activities that we can apply in the classroom or utilize. So say, for example, here, Treaty 7, I lifted this again from one of the resources in the ATESL best practices. What I normally do in the class is, at the beginning of my classroom setting of goals, I normally have my students interact with each other in that activity that I called as getting to know you. And I'm sure this getting to know you activity is a common practice in a CLB or link, so classes or any ESL or EAL classroom. Now, in that practice alone, getting to know you, what's your name, what's your educational background, what language do you speak, and what country are you from? So those are pretty much basic questions that we ask. We can probably expand that activity by incorporating the indigenous pieces. Incorporating also would mean like, how about knowing what are the different tribes or groups of indigenous people that are available in Canada? What kind of basic, so greetings or language or words probably that we can associate with in our way of understanding and familiarizing ourselves of this basic information related to indigenous culture and peoples. So this Treaty 7, specific to Treaty 7, they created some very simple, easy to follow materials that we can actually try in our classroom. And without us knowing, students might like the opportunity to learn a new language, might like the opportunity to learn another culture, another new information. So this could be a good information to expand from that getting to know you activity into something getting to know more about the indigenous people. We can start by knowing the greetings, knowing some words that can be connected to whatever topic that we would like to work in the classroom. So those are some of the activities that we can actually try out. Another thing that I would like to emphasize also is like how much of us is aware about the Indigenous Awareness Month and engagement. Somehow, you can also start by doing this, like familiarizing yourselves of what do we mean by Orange Shirt Day. As educators, we have to be aware also of what is happening in the community. What are those months that we can also promote, and at the same time make our students aware of what are being observed in the community. And one of that is the Orange Shirt Day. Another one is the National Indigenous Peoples Day. So we have a lot of resources, not only from the ATESL best practices. So I know some of the attendees here, maybe your program provided access to you to ELI, and that ELI subscription has a lot also of materials that pertains to Orange Shirt Day. Or if not, you can always go back to ATESL best practices and then check for yourselves if there are available videos like what I am posting in here. So we got this one, I got this one from BC Lions. You can also get something from CBC News. Why am I so strong about the promotion and then creating of awareness? Because oftentimes we celebrate a lot of events in Canada, but very less are pertaining to the awareness, stating this observance of the Orange Shirt Day, the National Indigenous Day, and then and many other celebrations or many other observances that speak about the indigenous peoples and culture. Maybe this is our time, so to participate and to become an ally to promote these resources, and at the same time to let our students be aware of what is happening in the community. And then to continue that awareness, I also have provided here some of the dates that we have to be aware of. Maybe we can incorporate this in the months that we are into our teaching. Maybe we have to be more aware of what is being observed in those months. So say, for example, in 2009, June became National Indigenous History Month in Canada. Are we paying attention also on these specific dates so that when we do with our planning, we can somehow incorporate this as part of the activity, probably a part of the reading activity, part of the writing, or any other skill tasks, related tasks that we would like to apply related to National Indigenous History Month. And at the same time, since June 2021, September the 30th has been designated as the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And in this way as well, it's not only that we are observing that National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, but how much of the awareness have we put into the classroom so that those students attending are really appreciative of why we are having this observance of the September 30th. It's not like, so they're happy because some of the classes probably are canceled because they have to be looking forward into a holiday, but it's not about the holiday. It's more about on how we respond to the calls of action related to our reconciliation or healing, and related also to how we promote this indigenous, so indigenous information during those months. And last but not the least, August the 9th marks International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. In other words, even though we have our own Indigenous peoples here, so in Canada, we cannot deny the fact that Indigenous peoples is not only home to Canada, they are all over the world. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation, we never know if some of those students who are in our classrooms could be part of those Indigenous communities. So acknowledging them, welcoming them, including them, their voices, including them into the classroom would be really a good way for us to incorporate those awareness months, and not only within Canada, but at the same time celebrating, and at the same time acknowledging those Indigenous learners that are also in our classroom. And somehow there is probably a question like, so Herly, you have provided us a lot of resources, but the most important thing is how to do those assessments, because if you are part of the link programming, you cannot deny the fact that you are compelled to do skill building tasks, skill using tasks, and the same is true with, so skill assessments, I mean. Now, I'm just showing here two samples of my creation. Whenever I do some assessments, I create my own rubric. And my only advice to those who are attending, probably if you're a beginner, and those of you who are already been doing or attend or facilitating link classes, so more or less you're aware about the rubric mechanic. But to me, in the way I see it, whenever I make an assessment rubric or a rubric for skill using, I see to it that I have a generic template, and at the same time, you can always, adjust in terms of the descriptors, in terms of the criteria that you would like to provide. So say, for example, here for speaking tasks or listening tasks, you can create your competencies. You can provide a short tasks for your students to follow. And at the same time, you can also create the descriptors. It's up to you how many, so descriptors you would like to incorporate into that rubric. And then because we are after in the collection of this assessment results, and so we just have to be aware of, checking in whether the activity that we have provided is being scaffolded from the skill building up to skill using before we have to create the assessment. So there should be continuity of the activity when we are incorporate, like for example, incorporating the Indigenous resources. So all of those resources that I have shared with you are actually possible, so for assessment, skill using, and skill building. How, as I said, you can create your own assessment rubric. You can also get some resources where rubrics are available, and you can simply tweak the content or the descriptors. So this one, I normally engage my students in making a small talk. And instead of that regular small talk about the weather, about, things like that, which is very cliche, I shifted my small talk into something deeper that has connection with the indigenous pieces. So for example, I make it a point that can you do a talk or can you do a topic that is related about indigenous culture? And then I would just simply list down, so indigenous culture pertaining to art, music, dances, food, and many other, so sectors, many other aspects that can be connected to culture. And then from there, students will have to choose which will be their comfort level to talk about. And then after that, they will be given time to probably, research about this information related to indigenous culture, or you as an instructor, you can provide information where you can direct students where to access those resources before jumping into your assessment tasks. And always see to it that when you create an assessment task, students are aware of what are those descriptors so that they know from the very beginning of what are to be rated by the teacher. How am I being rated by my teacher? What are the descriptors? Otherwise, that would be the disconnect again if you just put the students into an activity that they are not aware of what are the expectations. So that is why I see to it that when I create a rubric, I have to discuss this one with the class prior to having that assessment. And in that way, you can minimize also those negative feedback because there is a collaboration between you and your students. So you agreed primarily on what are the activities. You give them ample time to prepare before jumping into this assessment task. In the same manner, if you look at on the second assessment rubric that I created here, for email writing, as I said, I normally create a generic template. And then what changes here are the competencies. You can always use whether that is interaction, sharing information, getting things done, up to you. The tasks, you can always be, you can always create your tasks, whether it's a little bit shorter or longer, explanation or description, up to you. So what I did here is an invitation, like sending an email to invite a friend about a cultural event related to indigenous culture, traditions. And then I simply create a criteria where it is connected to productive skills, specifically for email writing. And then from there, I have to set what would be the meeting point for students to be successful in this task. So 3 out of 5 criteria, meaning to say 3 is considered to be passing or pass or achieve. And then anything below 3 is not yet achieved. So if the student ranked 5 over 5, then that would be considered as an excellent mark for the student. And then again, if there are other things that come up related to indigenous resources, again, as I mentioned, both the productive or so your speaking, listening, and then also the reading and writing skills, you can always tweak your assessment rubric depending on your tasks. So those are some of the information that I have in here before I proceed. Is there any questions so far in terms of those presentation that I have? Because what comes next here is a group activity that I requested Nura for everyone to have. But of course, I would like to make a pause here for a while if there are other questions or clarifications before we proceed to some group activity. Yeah, just let me know, Nora. I cannot see in here.
Right. Does anyone have any questions? No.
Nope. Okay. So yeah, that means to say we have to proceed. Thank you so much. So please, yeah, feel free to interrupt me, or probably if you have some questions towards the end. So I would really welcome that. And so that being said, we can proceed to our group sharing. So this is really very intentional because, as I said, I shouldn't be the only one, facilitating this or giving you some information, because I do respect those individuals, all of you who are attending here. In one way or the other, you have your own, knowledge and experience and skills to share each other in this, so in this forum. So I would like you to be in your group. Nura will be assigning everyone. I'm not so sure if it would be 4 people in a group or 5, depending on the size of attendees. I only have 2 questions here. One is, what Indigenous resources have you used or encountered in your ESL or EAL teaching, and how did the impact your students' learning experiences? So if you have those experiences or not, so please feel free to just participate and then put in your opinion. The second question that I have in here, what steps can you, whether you are an ESL, EAL educators and practitioners, take to ensure ongoing professional development and learning about Indigenous cultures, histories, and perspectives? So we'll just simply, so getting opinion here from each other, and then after 10 minutes, we come back to the regular room and then share whatever has been discussed.
All right. So what I will do right now, I will stop the recording session,
Sure.
and I will put everybody into 3 groups, and from there, we'll give you about 10 minutes, and by 6:10, we'll be back here. So if everyone can please accept your room, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Thank you, Nora. Nora,
yeah.
Are they able to see the question as well?
Okay, what I can do, I can broadcast this.
Yeah, the question in case they did not take a picture.
You can broadcast this. Okay, I can write it down.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll join. I'll be hopping from one room to the other.
Awesome, perfect. I'll write down the question. Oh, we can. Oh, shoot. I should have. Do you want to join? Yeah. Oh, Janet. Hi. Yuji, do you want to join as well?
Sorry, I didn't realize that I was muted.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we are one group, is that right?
Yeah, no. Do you want to join? You should have something coming up. Yes. Yeah, on your, it should